You're not cheating on your wife if you eat my lemon square.
Your lemon squares taste like ass.
Those are the films that Joe and I are like, yeah, those are our 10 favorite films of the year so far. But clearly, y'all have others. So, Joe, start naming people.
Okay. Well, why don't we begin with Ryan as one of our co-winners? So, Ryan, what was a film that didn't get covered that you would like to give some shout out to?
Nope.
Okay. No.
Yeah. It definitely, one of the things I like about it is I know it was like hot and cold for people watching it, but to see like all the conversations and the discourse and seeing what everybody was interpreting from it and from all the layers, it was such a good time. Like I really feel like he did something really amazing with this film, and I'm just in love.
I will say with Jordan Peele, what I kind of love is that like he is a filmmaker that has made like, you know, intricate, deep films that you can get a lot of different readings out of. For the mainstream, to where I see people that normally wouldn't be giving like films this much analysis and effort, like they want to do this for Jordan Peele films. So on that level, I really appreciate that, because I'm like, how is he making people care enough to give readings to films?
Yeah, love that.
Okay, Kay, you're up next.
Well, I just wanted to say that that's my current number one. I loved Nope so much.
Yeah, okay.
Same.
In fact, I mean, it's hard to compare his films in a lot of ways in terms of like I think like Get Out is clearly the best for a lot of reasons, and everyone keeps talking about how it's the most concise, like it's, you know, it's the most kind of like single vision of a story and a message, but I also feel like he's very much a director of his like he's full of influences. So the fact that that film was concise in that way, I think it's because his influences were also that kind of story. So with Nope, when you're opening up to literally the universe, I think that it like totally makes sense that it'd be a little more sprawling. And I think as a filmmaker, he is like the most giddy about filmmaking. Like he makes the most out of all of the different qualities of when it comes to sound, when it comes to storytelling. His characters in all of his films are so specific and compelling and interesting. And I just don't see people writing characters the way he does either. So yeah, it really blew me away. But for this, I'm gonna say We're All Going to the World's Fair. I really loved. And I think one of the big reasons for this is because it felt so authentic. It felt like it was like really raw, came from someone's lived experience, and one that I think a lot of people could relate to. And that is not told often. I feel like this isn't something we see kind of being presented back to us as this experience. You know, films tend to be a little larger than life, and there's a lot of creativity and like innovation in how Jane is telling this story, because that's kind of like the nature of the internet, is that everyone has their own voice and has their own way of presenting. So I think it allows for like a lot of interesting visuals and a lot of interesting ideas. But I also think just we need more stories about this experience, because all of us are sitting on our phones or grew up on our computers or whatever the case may be. Like I think it's kind of odd that there aren't as many stories related to that, since it's like 95% of our existence now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and We're All Going to the World's Fair was actually one of our honorable mentions. So we would have gotten there eventually, but it's good that you raised it up. Okay, so Nope, We're All Going to the World's Fair. Lindsay.
Oh my God, my other two were like so, I don't want to say basic, that's unfair, but I'm gonna go with Crimes of the Future.
Okay.
And
Basic? That's not basic.
Yeah, like what's basic?
Then you're
about
talking
that?
about
Basic,
native
yeah.
that's the
Cronenberg. Like,
less,
come on.
the least basic of my last two, I guess I'll say. But the other one I also would totally go to bat for. But
Wait, what was it? But then explain Crimes of the Future.
okay, I won't mention it, but I also had the Black Phone, which
Hmm.
hot take. I thought the Black Phone was really fun. And I really
So that's
liked
more
it.
basic. But
I also
Cronenberg.
have that on my list too.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it.
Let me stop.
Crimes of the Future, I think. So like, I don't know. I mean, I really like David Cronenberg. I'm an existence girl. I'm a girl who's like, give me your sci-fi, but then also make it weird. So I actually didn't enjoy watching Crimes of the Future at all. Like I had a pretty bad time. I was in like, it was like the wrong mood. I had like been out for like patio drinks that day. And then we're like, let's go see a movie, like kind of like buzzed on like sangria, and then watch Crimes of the Future is like the wrong choice. And I was like, yeah, this might be like too weird. I don't know. But then I went home. I wasn't going to like write about it or do anything. And I went home and I just like couldn't wait to like talk about it and write about it and think about it and tell everyone what I thought about it. And I think that was what made it really special to me, was that it was just like, maybe I didn't really like watching it very much. But I think what like Cronenberg does really well is he kind of like controls you with his movies in a weird way. Like
Yes.
even Existenz, yeah, right. Like even Existenz feels very like kind of like Clockwork Orange, how like when you read the book, you're like forced to understand the language that they speak in it. I feel like the fact that he even forced you to pronounce it Existenz and sound like a total dummy is like the kind of magic that he can make. And so I really felt that about Crimes of the Future. And then I really think that what was cool is that it felt like a natural progression of a guy who like left that version of storytelling behind and then came back to it with like a new perspective. And yeah, so did I like watching it? I was like, no, this chair gag is gross. Please stop it. I don't want to hear people chew anymore. Like, I can't wait to get out of this theater. And then the second I got home, I was like, okay, who else has seen it? Who wants to talk about it? And just like totally obsessed about it. So anyway, that is my honorable mention.
Good.
It's funny. 3 movies that kind of like stick with you long after the movie experience, right? All right. Jenny.
Okay, well, I'm really glad Nope and Crimes of the Future were mentioned, so I could mention this one, which is Flux Gourmet, which how many
Ooh.
people have seen it here? Okay,
I haven't seen that.
it's really good. Peter Strickland,
It's so good.
he is such a visionary when it comes to like modern horror. I think I love his Giallo influences, and Asa Butterfield, great in this movie. Gwendolyn Christie, great in this movie. It's so disgusting. I'm like,
I've never heard of this.
Oh, really, Trace?
No.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it hasn't gotten a lot of talk about it, but the people who have seen it were like, oh, we're doing like musical food shit. It's weird.
What?
Love it.
This,
I love
this
it.
Weird
sounds
is my
like
gospel.
shit.
I
no,
know, and
okay,
we're talking
so
about Duke
the
of
character
Burgundy.
has like gas issues the entire film.
Yeah, he has
so-
Crohn's disease. He's getting diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And so like the world that Peter Strickland builds in this film. So Peter Strickland did he did
In
Duke of
Fabric.
Burgundy,
Oh,
he did
my
In
favorite.
Fabric, Barbarian Sound Studio.
Mhm.
So this is a world that he has built where instead of people being rock stars who play instruments, they play food.
Yeah.
And so it takes place at this incredibly weird like conservatory, and it's all about like artistic bandmate drama, but they're playing with food and performance art, and it's so bizarre, and it's
Very
so
farty,
gross.
isn't it?
Wait.
It's so that's what they play up in the marketing, like the farting aspect of it.
Oh,
but
okay.
it's done in a way that's not like immature. You know what I'm? 'Cause you know, like farts can become such like a bro thing. It's done in a really interesting way where it's not like a punch line, and more you're like, oh god, like that's horrible. Like you're kind of feel bad for him being in pain, and it's like integrating that also into the music of their music, and they use his stomach sounds as part of their performance.
So my one question for Jenny actually is, because you left some movies off intentionally because you didn't think they qualified as horror, but this film you do qualify as a horror film.
Oh yeah, no, it is a horror film. That's what it is a horror film.
Okay,
I don't think
nothing
there's
y'all have
any other way
said
to
has made it sound like a
qualify
horror
it,
film to me.
Peter Strickland's horror always comes from like it's the grotesque stuff. Like he does a lot of like body horror and imagery, and like I mean it's Giallo influenced, which is a subgenre of horror. Like it's 100% a horror movie. It's a horror comedy.
Okay.
Want to go farther into that, but
yeah,
I mean, it's just like it's a lot of like genre bending, genre blending, but it ultimately Flux Gourmet is a horror movie.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
I think I almost wanted to mention it because it wasn't on that IMDb list and it made me annoyed. Because I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
It very much sounds like it marches to like the beat of its own drum to make a musical allegory. But yeah, the problem with things like IMDb lists, like, so for folks watching, we sent out a master list of what IMDb considers the top horror films of the year. And it's like, it is a little bit basic. It's like exactly what you would expect horror to be. So movies like this that play on the margins or they blur the lines, like, are not going to show up in a conventional list like that.
You also have to watch out for release year because, like, if you filter through Letterboxd, if it did a festival in 2021, they considered a 2021 film. But we, for the purposes of this, are considering it 2022 if it got a wide release in 2022.
Letterboxd has brought nothing but chaos to this party.
You're not lying.
Also, Letterboxd does say it's a horror movie.
There we go.
To be fair, right?
But it did come out in 2022. It premiered at a festival in 2022 and came out. So it's 100% a 2022 movie.
And it is widely available now too. So if folks are watching and they're interested, you can go and check it out right now.
Oh, this is going on my watch list like very soon.
You like the Duke of Burgundy? This is lit.
There we go.
I'm gonna see it. ASAP.
Okay, MaryBeth.
Okay, so everyone has said some really good ones, but I think the one that I'm going to pick is a Taiwanese movie called The Sadness.
That was on my list, MB. Yeah,
that was an honorable mention for us as well.
It was on my list too.
So this one came out, well, it played at Fantasia last year, and then it hit a Shudder this year. And I'm just an extreme horror bitch. I love me some gnarly fucked up horror, some nihilism, but also there's like something going on here. It's not just nasty to be nasty. And I love this movie as much as I hate watching it. It's
Jenny and I had an experience watching this at Fantastic Fest where the audience turned on the director, and this was one of the most hated films of that festival.
Oh no!
There was some really tragic behavior on behalf of the director.
Really stupid.
Yeah,
I'm
he made some
sorry.
really insensitive comments.
He was not very good at a Q&A, and also I don't like he doesn't understand Taiwanese politics very well, and he wasn't very good at I just don't like that movie for a lot of reasons, but the director is really dumb and he walked himself into that one.
He did. Yes. Someone asked if he had to cut anything out of the film, and he said there's a scene in which a corpse was getting raped, and then he made a joke about how corpses can't give consent. And then a lot of people who were sexual assault survivors in the audience who went to go see the movie because they were told it was going to be a fun romp were not feeling very generous with this movie.
Romp?
Not
a
fun romp.
They criticized the way that the description had been written up in the program and so on. So it I think instigated some interesting discussions about like trigger warnings and what responsibility we have as like critics and festival programmers to like alert our audiences. But not great for some people in that audience.
When it played at Fantasia, it had all these trigger warnings.
It didn't have that at Fantastic Fest though.
Granted, the woman who introduced it was very much like hey, this is like, just watch out, like this is a very intense movie. But yeah, Fantasia's was like, we don't give content warnings, but this film merits all of them, so watch out. In the program, Fantastic Fest didn't give this. I will say though, this is a movie. This is a movie that I was lukewarm on when I saw it at Fantastic Fest, because I think my experience was colored by all the drama at the festival. So rewatching it about 6 to 7 months later, I actually did enjoy it quite a bit.
Wow.
Okay. Adrian.
Okay, so pretty much my list has been knocked out. My number one this year for sure is also Nope. So I'm so happy that she's got a lot of love so far. I mean, the only other movies that I've seen this year, I haven't seen a lot, unfortunately. But the only other three I've seen were Uma, Men, and The Long Night. And I'm not a fan of any of them, truly.
Love you, Adrian.
none of them they just weren't it for me.
Yeah.
But if any of them were to get a shout out, maybe Uma. Sandra Oh was great. I think she's fantastic in that movie, and I think it's really pretty. And there's some good jump scares in there.
Lovely
sure.
gowns.
Yes. But the other two I wasn't a fan of, and that's all I've seen this year, unfortunately. So Uma, maybe if anything, check it out. She's on Netflix at least.
It was interesting because I feel like I heard Uma being compared to Master, where you're like, it's shot well, it looks good, great leading performances, but the movie ain't it. So
not a lot going on there.
Okay.
For the Standra O's.
What her fan base calls themselves? I wasn't aware. That's cute.
I don't know. I don't know.
I was gonna say, I feel like DeVaughn just made that up.
I just kind of made that up.
That's good enough to be fact for me. I'm just gonna go ahead and run with that. Thanks.
You guys are welcome
Make that a
now.
thing.
Oh my god. Okay, DeVaughn, hit us with your, I'm guessing, eclectic pick.
Hey, this was a pick that like I watched because I knew a lot of people or a few people on the panel enjoyed this one. I did want to say I almost watched Flux Gourmet because in Fabric did some things to me, and so I know I'm gonna enjoy it. I actually muted you guys when you were talking about, but your guys' facial reactions were fantastic. But mine was I had a very arresting watch of Hypochondriac today.
Okay.
Yes.
There we go.
Before watching this, and yeah, Terry and MB had it on my radar, and I knew it was a movie I need to be in the mood to watch because mom stuff is always gets me in movies, and it's also, but at the same time, it was like kind of perfect because like I'm at a point where I'm like kind of interrogating my mental health a little bit more, and you know, dealing with like some of the trauma and like what behavior my mother, you know, presented me with my trauma, and you know, nothing to the extent of, you know, the person in this film, but it I definitely found myself relating to what Will was going through like so much, and the film techniques that are used to like kind of put us in his situation. And you know, it plays on the fears. It doesn't, you know, spend all of its time just on the fears of you know, the trauma from his mother, but also like, you know, the fears of being in a happy relationship. Like whenever you're like, oh, this person like might be someone that means a lot to me, and like how scary that can be, you know, in tandem with what he's personally going through as well. So like the way that those melded together, and I was like kind of halfway through, and I was like, oh, this isn't as soul crushing as I thought it was going to be. And then like 15 minutes later, I was sobbing, and I was like,
it's so good.
Louise. It's so good.
It made my list too. Like ever since I read MB's like review on it, I knew I was in for a good time, but it just, yeah, I feel you, DeVaughn. Like, oh my God.
I felt a lot. It was great though. Like it was a great, like I love that. Like I craved that out whenever I'm like, I feel like I need to watch this right now. And it like kind of hit that at that like perfect time for me.
That's really, so I liked Hypochondriac. My main issue with it, because I mean, I think there's a lot of things really interesting. I love that we get some kind of analingus in it. I'm sorry. I liked, without spoiling anything, the final minutes of that film. Yeah. Personally, it's kind of a thing where I'm like, oh, like, I've seen this particular story done a lot in a very similar way, but this is gay. So I appreciate that aspect of it, but it didn't differentiate it enough from other films I've seen like it before to make me like love it, if that makes any sense.
Honestly, it was kind of the other way for me. I was like, yeah, this is a usual story, but it's doing it in such a powerful and like authentic way. Just at the way that Will was written and Luke, and like just the way that the characters were written felt so real. But then like the final like 5-10 minutes kind of felt like a usual ending to me. And it was I was kind of like, I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. Like I totally understood the ending, and I was like, I accept it, but it wasn't. I don't know. The ending needed something, just a little something for me.
The ending rang the most true to me out of everything.
The ending like broke me.
Yeah, I totally got it. Like I don't fault the ending at all.
But I think this is interesting, right? Because we've all said very similar things about films where it's like, oh yeah, like it's very pedestrian, but these other things elevated enough to where I really love this. You know, that was Watcher for me and Joe. That was Hypochondriac for some of you. That was so. Again, it's all about like, how are these movies connecting with us? How do they make us feel? So it's not easy. Like you can't quantify this always where it's like, oh yeah,
that's real.
So again, that's why I like having these discussions, because what affects you one way or affects you a lot may not affect someone else, and you know, vice versa.
You know what I think it is, Trace? Like a piece of it is we're a little forgiving for some reference because obviously like horror is so self-referential. And sometimes if it's done properly, we actually enjoy that because it shows that maybe the filmmaker has like a certain love for the genre. So they're giving like shine or praise to certain things. But I guess like it's one of those things where it's like it's a tricky balance. So I get what you mean. Like certain like movies can feel very similar to each other, but who it's directed by can elevate it, or the way the ending comes around at the last minute, it can take it to something else, even if you kind of knew what it was heading to. I can't remember the movie y'all were talking about earlier, but there was one where you all said like, I knew that it was going to end a particular way. I could see it coming, but the direction, The Watcher, there we go, like brought it up for you. Because sometimes I can see where a movie's going, but the ride is so fun that I'm just like, you know what? Okay, all right.
Well, it's like I like stalking movies. Like so, I'm into that subgenre. Whereas, is the main character crazy? Is he not? Is he hallucinating? Like that's not really my favorite type of movie to watch. And so I'm not cutting it as much slack as some other people might. If it's whatever.
Okay, and Terry, you are our last pick. Have we covered your list, or have you got one special?
No,
one for
I
us?
have. Well, okay, so I have an honorable mention, The Long Walk by Maddie Doe. Honorable mention on mine because the way it kind of builds, without giving things away, a serial killer narrative is very interesting to me, and it worked really well for me. But the one that like is going to be, I can't imagine it not being my favorite at the end of the year is You Won't Be Alone. Which
that's a good one.
Yeah, which the way it like tackles gender, the way it tackles like the human existence, the way it kind of captures both like the horror, the mundaneness, but also like some of the pleasures in it, just like really affected me. And it was by the last line of the movie, just like I was like holding back my tears the entire time. And then that last line, it just like I just cried to the credits. It like really emotionally resonated with me. So that's my favorite of the year for sure.
Also, mommy issues.
Yeah.
Also, mommy issues. Yeah, I feel like I always want to like couch that one because I'm very protective of it. Like, because I really feel like they dropped the marketing and a lot of the trailer on it because people think they're going into it to watch like a Noomi Rapace witch movie, and it's definitely a witch movie, but it's really more about like the humanity of just being alive. And yeah, it's a really gorgeous film, but it's slow. It's not going to give you your conventional horror beat. So you got to go into it like ready to just have like a really kind of emotional, interesting experience.
Yeah.
That's actually a good chunk of these movies that are honorable mentions. I mean, Crimes of the Future, we're all going to the World's Fair. I mean, I think all these kind of fall into that category where these films are pushing the boundaries of what genre is and what it counts as.
Well, and I really appreciate that a lot of you folks brought like indie picks or like unconventional picks because that forces us to kind of broaden our traditional definitions of horror. Like, not to always throw Jason Blum under the house or under the bus, but he does it to himself. So I'll just pile onto it. But like, like there's a lot of conventional studio films that are great, but also I think sometimes the indie filmmakers that aren't getting all the love and support are the ones who are kind of like out there breaking new and interesting ground. And we need to do our best to elevate their films so that they have different kinds of opportunities.
Yeah.
Well,
you're right. It is the house. He's under. You were going to throw him under the house because it is the Blum house.
Under his own house.
Hey.
Well, it's like
he's like the
Wizard of
Wicked Witch
Oz.
of the East with his little hands like sticking out.
There's no women horror filmmakers.
I just wanted to just quickly shout out Hatching and Hellbender. We're all,
Hellbender. Hellbender was this year. Holy
Yeah. This is where we're like, oh, it's halfway through the year. We're already forgetting movies that have come out this year.
Well, because
it was festivals in 2021.
Yeah, festivals.
If we're doing quick shout outs to also Resurrection is really good. I like that one a lot.
Oh, Resurrection. Oh, and then also shout out to Gateway, which is this tiny Irish haunted house horror movie that came out that I feel like no one has heard of. It came out like really quietly. It's like Session 9 meets what was the other movie that I compared it to? But it's got, if you like Session 9, it's got Session 9 vibes. So I highly recommend it. Oh no, Session 9 and Kill List. It's like those two movies. So if you like that vibe, check it out. It's real good. And I feel like no one has seen it because it came out 2 weeks ago and the marketing was one email that went out. So
There we go.
Is this the one by Niall Owens?
yes.
I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other shout outs before we close out? All right. Well, you're all winners in our book.
Yeah.
Except
After
Brian and
Trace
Kay are the
trash
real
talks
winners.
you.
Right.
Well, thank you all for joining us. And
is so much
I mean, I'll look forward to your picks at the end of the year if this is like the kind of diversity that we're going to get at the halfway point.
I actually think that we'll have more. So if we do it again at the end of the year, let's say, it'll be August 12th through wherever we do it. I actually think there's going to be more movies to pick from in that time frame than all the horror movies that came out before August 5th of this year.
That's bananas.
Even this month
Why
is
would
like
you
jam
say
packed.
that? Oh my god.
Basically, you'll see all of us. None of us will have hair because we'll all just be so exhausted from trying to stay afloat.
That's some real.
It's always at like by July every year without fail. I'm like, oh, it's been kind of a weak year. And then like by the end of August, I'm like, oh, here it comes.
Yeah.
Stop it. October. Oh God.
Well, yeah, thank y'all everyone for coming out for this. And I mean, I don't really have any housekeeping, Joe. So I guess until our next Horror Queers hangout, we can cross this one out. Cross out Match Game.
Indeed. Yes. Bye, folks.
Bye.